Hi, I'm Dr. Karen Parker here with your Quantum Human Design weekly energy forecast for the week starting on April the 7th, 2025. So, there are a lot of different things I want to unpack this week, and I'm not even sure where I want to start. But I think I'll start with, again, a bigger picture perspective for just a moment. We're in a cycle and a season of disruption, which means our mantra really is expect the unexpected. And of course, it's difficult to prepare and to plan and to move forward and to even tap into momentum and know what to do when the theme of the year, really, or this season of disruption is really expect the unexpected. How do you stay grounded and stable and connected to your path forward when you don't know what the terrain ahead is going to bring? That's probably the question for the year. And certainly, I would say, the most important thing we have to be able to do during this time of upheaval is to stay connected to ourselves. One of the beautiful things that I personally love so much about human design is that it is a really reliable and practical way with time and experimentation to get back in touch with what feels right and good inside your body and what doesn't, meaning you're designed to have an inner navigation system so that you can use your intuition, your instincts, and even the visceral responses of your body, regardless of your type, in order to connect with your inner knowingness of what's the next right step. What is the direction and the path in which you should follow? So certainly I would say continuing to cultivate a connection to yourself and your body and your body's inner knowingness and your heart and what feels good and right and what doesn't, and deconditioning, meaning cleaning up your personal narrative so that you're not telling a story about who you are and how you are that includes being a victim or being or feeling victimized or disempowered. We have to, and I think the work of this season is for us to reclaim sovereignty over our personal narrative. When you take back control over the story, you tell yourself and the world about who you are. And it needs to be a really good story, a story that includes your love-worthiness, your value, your preciousness, your power. When you take back sovereignty over that story, you also take back control over the space between stimulus and response. You're no longer in reactive tape loops, trying to prove yourself in some way, shape, or form to other people out in the world. You are simply choosing with great intention, with a deep connection to your authentic self, and you're using that connection as your compass for how you move forward during times of uncertainty. Probably now more than ever, this is the most important skill set you have to cultivate. And the very first thing that I would encourage you to keep doing is keep taking back control over your story. Keep telling a story about yourself, about who you are, that is really worthy of who you are. You are a once-in-a-lifetime cosmic event. And you have within you all the knowledge, all the information. You have within you this incredibly elegant but simple navigation tool that lets you connect to your inner wisdom to move yourself forward in an aligned way so that when things feel disrupted, when you don't know where to put your foot down because all of a sudden the sidewalk has moved while you were mid-step, that you'll know exactly what direction to go to next. This isn't an overnight thing. This is an experiment, and it's a process of resetting and relearning the true story of who you are. If you want to learn more about how to really navigate times of disruption, I've written a free ebook for you. I've posted the link for it below. The title of the ebook is Mastering Life's Transitions. It's going to walk you through some systematic explorations to help you make sure that during this time of uncertainty, you're connected to yourself, your vision for what you want, and a path forward to help you get there, even if the landscape looks a little bit different today than it looked yesterday and last week. All right, let's talk about the energy forecast for this week. So as I said, there's a lot of different places that I could start and tackle. I think that I want to start actually with the full moon on Sunday. So 7 days from today, Monday, I want to look at this full moon. This full moon, remember, full moon energy is about releasing, right? It's about shining light on that which no longer works. It's about really settling in and exploring what needs to be moved out of the way in order for us to fulfill the vision and the dream that we established with the new moon, our previous new moon, right? And of course, our previous new moon was also a new moon that was accompanied by an eclipse. So we had a very intense Aries new moon starting off the season. And now we have a full moon highlighting the energy of Libra in the gate 32, the gate of endurance. Now, I want to start here because endurance is probably a good skill set for us to cultivate during this time of disruption. This season is not going away. We've been in it for years. It's going to continue for a few years. So we are really literally needing endurance in order for us to move forward. Now, endurance is an interesting energy. When we look at where endurance lives in the chart, it's actually part of what in traditional human design you call the ego circuit. It's where the energy for business lives in the chart. So it can have an economic aspect to it in that it is about holding true, holding steady, not reacting, particularly when the economic environment shifts. And so certainly it's an invitation for us to keep a cool head and to not panic in the face of what looks like economic volatility. Stay the course, think long term, and do what you need to do in the interim to take care of yourself and hopefully create for yourself a little bit of a buffer. Things will eventually get better and they may be destabilized for a little bit. But that's a very mundane exploration of that energy. Endurance is actually a really interesting energy in the chart. It is related to or connected to the gate 54. That whole channel of 5432 connects the root center to the spleen center. This is the place where we are invited to cultivate the energy and do the work necessary to set the stage for what's next. Now, let me give you an example. Let's say, for example, you want to write a book and you have a vision of becoming a New York Times bestselling author, right? That's your dream. And the 54, the electromagnetic to the 32, is a place where some of our dreaming energy lives. It's a place where we have divine inspiration, if you will, big ideas, big dreams, hopes for what we'd like to fulfill in our lives. Now, the reality of the situation is you are never going to become a New York Times bestselling author if you don't either A, hire a ghostwriter, or B, write the darn book. I can't tell you, as somebody who's owned 3 different publishing companies over the course of my life, how many people have come to me and said, I want to write a New York Times bestseller, but they've never actually completed a manuscript. You won't become a New York Times bestseller if you don't have a book. You got to have a book. And so this 32 energy is very much about the work of writing the book. 32 energy invites us to look at what do we need to do to set the stage for our dreams to come true. Now, it's tricky with human design because sometimes the way human design is taught, we're taught that we have to wait and wait and wait and wait and wait and follow strategy. And for most of us, especially generator types and projector types, that waiting involves something external to us to show up, and then we either respond to it or we take an invitation. But we can facilitate the opportunities. And in fact, I will say that we greatly facilitate the expansion of possibilities and opportunities in our lives when we set the stage. Okay, you will never get, if you're a projector, somebody who's going to call you up and say, hey, I invite you to write a book, right? The invitation isn't about writing the book. The invitation is about ways in which you can transmit that book out into the world. The book marketing, the book being delivered to the world, that's the work that maybe comes to you from invitation. And obviously marketing is also a thing that you do. So I want to really be clear that for us to facilitate the thing to respond to, or for us to facilitate the thing to be invited to, first of all, we need energy. And if you're exhausted, depleted, and burned out, and that's a lot of us right now, because this has been hard. It's been hard. That this is not the time to push forward. This is the time to rest. And that resting is actually an action. Sometimes we forget that, and we forget that resting is actually an action, and it is an action that actually sets the stage for what's next. And so sometimes it means we got to get out of disruptive patterns of overworking, pushing, hustling, and depleting ourselves, or pushing against our authentic selves. We have to heal that exhaustion first before we can have or tap into endurance. So certainly this moon is going to invite you to really check in with how much energy do you have? And is the thing that you need to do rest? Rest is a thing we need to do sometimes. The second thing is that you have to clear your plate. And in fact, the sun at the end of this week, during this full moon, the sun, the gate, which is highlighting the gate 42, the gate of conclusion in quantum human design, is saying, You can't be ready for what's next if you haven't finished taking care of your unfinished business. You got to bring things to a completion. You've got to finish up so that your plate is clear and you have room for something new, because if you haven't, you're going to be overloaded and you're not going to be able to do the work that you need to do because you're going to be distracted. You're going to be, even if even if it's something that you've kind of pushed off to the dark recesses of your mind, it's still chewing up space and eating up energy. And so you've got to finish up unfinished business to make room for you to have new capacity, new energy for endurance. And you got to do those things that put you in place to be able to be ready for something to respond to, or the invitation. Obviously, if you're an initiator type, you're going to wait for that internal alignment. And for the reflector types, you've got to wait and go through that rotation of your 28-day plus lunar cycle. And I would say, that you still can do the work of, say, writing the book metaphorically while you're waiting out your cycle. You have to be ready for the invitation. You have to be ready for the thing to respond to. And certainly the 32 is an invitation for us to explore, what do we need to do to get ready, which is a very powerful energy that is kind of perfect, obviously, because there's always perfection in the celestial weather, for the rest of the themes in the celestial weather. So let's talk about the gate that keeps on giving, the gate 36, which Neptune was highlighting the 36 for a long time before it shifted into the 25. We've got Mercury, which goes direct well, technically it goes direct, I think, on the 7th, on April the 7th, but it's in the shadow until April the 26th. So even though Mercury goes direct, we're still like not quite there yet. Right now we're getting the do-over part. So think about it this way. When a planet goes retrograde, it's going retrograde is passing through gates in human design that we've already seen. And then it goes back through those gates to get back to where it was before it went retrograde again. So we get like this cosmic do-over with retrograde energy. And certainly, even though Mercury does go direct this week, we're still in the shadow until April the 26th. So that means we're still redoing these themes, and it starts to go direct, highlighting the gate 36. Just hold that thought, because we've got Mercury going direct, holding the gate 36. We've got Venus going direct April the 13th, also highlighting the 36. We've got Saturn highlighting the 36. And the 36 is in the nodes. So we've got this 36 theme. We've been playing with it forever. We're going to keep playing with it for a little bit longer. The 36 in the shadow is chaos. It's leaping into the emotional foray, the emotional arena, right? And not waiting for clarity and reacting, right? That's the shadow of this energy. And certainly, when we're in cycles of disruption, reactivity and chaos can be a normal part of disruption. But that's a shadow. It's also a place where there's potential for fighting and war and lots of emotional drama, right? That we also are seeing that play out a little bit in the, collective environment. But here's the piece that's so fascinating and so powerful and empowering about this energy. This same energy, which can be chaos, is also the energy where miracles live. And if you think about a miracle is something that defies a pattern, right? If you have an expectation that you're going to die because, 99.8% of the people who have whatever disease you may have are going to die, your expectation is you're going to die. The 36 says, oh, but the 0.02%, that could be you, right? It's the story of possibility that leaves our mind open to the potential of breaking the pattern. And so this energy, this possibility of miracles, breaking patterns, defying the patterns, exists also in this 36 energy. So it's an incredibly good energy that supports us in breaking free from limiting patterns, breaking free from the patterns of the past. It can be an energy that supports us in disrupting patterns that no longer serve us. And so certainly with these major planetary players and a lot of personal planetary energy playing out this theme of pattern disruption, potential liberation from pattern disruption, we see that the energy of this week brings us the opportunity to break free from things that are no longer serving us. This gets interesting even in an even more interesting planetary placement with the sun. The sun this week highlights the gate 51, which in traditional human design is called the gate of shock. In quantum human design, we call the gate of initiation. Now, this 51 energy, I like to think of it, I talked about this a little bit last week, as the barbed wire that lines the fence along your life path, right? If you start to get too far off your life path, you get distracted, you forget who you are, you get really super conditioned, you start to follow all the rules of the game, you step off that path too far, that barbed wire fence is going to poke you, right? And that 51 energy oftentimes brings unexpected twists and turns in the plot outline, but those twists and turns are not about punishment. They are about reminding you that, oh, wait, hey, you're off your path. And you need to get yourself realigned back to the path and get back on that path because you have a higher purpose to fulfill and you're off track. You're off the chart, okay? Now this gets also interesting because Neptune highlights the gate 25, completing this channel of the priestess and the shaman via the transits, connecting the will to the G, or in another way of looking at it, getting us back reconnected to our higher purpose. But sometimes for us to connect with that higher purpose, we have to ask ourselves, what needs to die in me? What part of my identity, my personal identity, needs to die? My conditioned identity needs to die in order for me to be reborn in a more aligned, authentic expression of my higher purpose, who I really am. And so certainly this week, as we start to see this 36 energy play out in multiple positions, this disruptive energy, and we see the 51 with the sun highlighting the 51, the Neptune highlighting the 25, we see this really radical transformational energy, this reconnecting, realigning energy come into play. It certainly is a week for us to begin to or continue to ask ourselves what needs to be healed, released, aligned, or brought to my awareness for me to be more deeply connected and aligned with my higher purpose, who I really am, who I was born to be, and how do I need to begin to shift and change my environment and my patterns and habits so that I am living more true to the person I was born to be. And what do I need to do to strengthen my resilience and my capacity to endure? What needs to get cleared out of the way? What old business do I need to finish up? What old patterns need to be brought to a completion? What things need to change so that I have energy, space, room, clarity, connection? What needs to move out of the way so that I can have the capacity to stay true to myself, stay true to the long haul, stay true to the bigger vision of what I'm here to do and who I'm here to be, so that I can fulfill the full story, the full purpose of who I was born to become, who I was born to be, and who I was born to grow into becoming. So that's kind of our big overarching theme this week. Of course, Uranus highlighting the gate 8, which is the place where we express our relentlessly authentic identity, is also kind of playing into this, giving us this beautiful support to really remove out of our way, out of our story, any lie we've been telling about ourselves, any place where we have felt like it wasn't okay or safe to be relentlessly authentic. Uranus is basically saying, hey, let's get on with it. Let's get all this stuff out of the way. Poof. And sometimes in kind of magical and shocking ways, how can we move out of your path everything that's causing you to think you're less than who you are? Let's get rid of it, right? That's our other theme for this week. So as you can see, lots and lots of great planetary support to bring us back into realignment. I think the piece that I just want to leave you with is, don't take the moment-to-moment changes to heart. It is such an important time right now to take a big enough step back from the arena within which we're all playing, the collective arena, the community arena, even our personal arena. Give yourself enough space and distance and perspective to get the lay of the land so that you can really see what's going on in the bigger perspective and not get lost in the immediate reaction. You know, my grandmother always said, if you pray for flowers, don't be mad if it rains, right? And so we can't be mad that it's raining right now. We don't understand necessarily where we're headed yet, but we can steer those cosmic forces when we're clear enough, when we've deconditioned enough, when we have a better sense of who we are. We are in the rain right now, for sure. We're in the rain. Things have been disrupted. We're sitting in the unknown, but you're not a victim of the unknown. You can steer the cosmic forces in a direction of your intention when you know who you are and you know how you are, and you clean up any part of your narrative that's keeping you playing small. So don't play small, play big, because you're here for a reason and your existence is an integral part of the cosmic plan. So don't forget, you are a once-in-a-lifetime cosmic event, and you are here to play an irreplaceable role in the cosmic story. So thank you for being you. Thank you for being here. Take good care of yourselves and have a great week.